guys, the hardest question we have to answer these days is, what the heck is legal ops? And why is it so hard for us to explain this to our mothers and our children and our friends? Nobody defines it the same way, and if we talk about the buzzwords like efficiency and effectiveness, what does that really mean? So let's get to the show floor and ask people how they tell their parents about what they do.
We're not lawyers, but we are part of the legal team, which is really hard to explain, but like that's usually my first go-to.
I keep lawyers in line and give them processes to follow. That's what I tell them.
Oh boy. I just try to put it in very simple terms, right?
I think my mom still thinks I'm a lawyer. Like, Mom, no, I didn't go to law school.
I didn't even know what legal ops was, even when I was doing it. But that was like 4 years ago.
Do more people know what legal ops is, or is it still a mystery?
Mystery. I think we're getting better. We definitely need to define it, just like everything else legal-wise.
People used to say, oh, aren't you just paralegals? But that's not the case anymore.
We have the foundation to understand what lawyers do, how they do it, and then how we can apply technology.
We're innovators.
Yeah,
I would
think
say,
we're good.
Based on the systems that we use, it has enabled our team to be innovators across other ops teams within the business.
If I could rename us right now or give us a symbol, it would be the Batman symbol. He's got all the tech. He's an orphan. We feel orphaned sometimes in our pursuit to get leadership's attention, and we're going against the grain.
Wow. I am so excited to have the opportunity today to be able to facilitate the discussion with this world-class panel here. I want to thank everybody for joining us. As Adam stated, I'm Frances Pomposo, and I am so excited to be here. We have a world-class panel with, as you can see, a number of diverse global leaders who, with their experience, their knowledge, are really going to be able to have just an amazing conversation today about a very timely topic. Everyone on our panel represents a very diverse role and perspective across the ecosystem. We're going to be discussing legal operations generally, the role, how we function as a community, and how we can better position ourselves for where we're at this point in time. I also want to remind and kind of harken back to Jen's keynote speech where she was talking about this challenge of being Legal Ops 3.0. And that's very much along the lines of what we're going to be talking about today, elevating and taking the legal operations ecosystem, profession, and function to that next level. So I would invite each of the panelists to just introduce themselves really quickly. And I'm going to start with you, Katrina.
Hello, everybody. My name's Katrina Gowans. I'm the Director of Legal Operations at IFM Investors, which is a global funds management firm. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I'm also very proud to be the co-chair of the Australian Regional CLOC chapter with my shout out to my co-chair, Anna Golovsky, who's also here. I'm absolutely delighted and a tiny bit nervous being on this stage today, but I'm really excited about the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. All right, Guy, you are up.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Guilherme Tocci. I'm from Brazil. I'm super excited to be here, very honored and very pleasure to see that many Brazilians here at CGI for the first time. Like we have 15 people from Brazil, which is amazing. Yeah. I'm one of the regional group leaders for Brazil, and I'm the head of global legal operations for Gympass, a well-being startup in Brazil. So thank you very much. Super excited for today.
Yay. Before I introduce myself, I'm going to embarrass Guy for a moment because he is so lovely and so dedicated to CLOC that he is actually getting married in Vegas on Saturday. So
yeah.
That's
It's going to be amazing. Yeah.
So congrats to you. I'm Mary O'Carroll. I'm the Chief Community Officer at Ironclad, which is a contracts lifecycle management company. Prior to that, I spent most of my career doing legal ops, so been one of you guys. I was at Google for 13 years, and I also had a small hand in putting together the CLOC organization and leading it in the past. So excited to be here. Sure.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Curt McDaniel. I'm the Chief Legal Officer at Varian Pharmaceuticals. We're a global pharmaceutical company based in Switzerland, and we've been on a legal operations journey for a while now. I joined CLOC back in 2016, And in 2019, we hired our first legal operations person, Sheila Dussault, who's probably here someplace. And this year, actually right now, we're recruiting for our 6th legal operations position based in our New Jersey office. So we've been on a journey, and I can tell you I really appreciate what legal operations does for me in running the legal department, and I really appreciate the CLOC community. So it's great to be here.
Thank you, Curt. So we're going to dive right in. I do want to set some context and just a reminder about what we're going to be talking about from a high-level theme. So at the highest level, where is the legal operations role now? I think you can all see from the conversations that you've been having with your peers, the panels and discussions that we've been having throughout CGI, it's very evident that while we have made strides as a community, there still remains a gap in understanding, possibility, and just overall kind of alignment on what is legal operations. I think it was evident in that teaser video that was just shown as well. I mean, it's funny and it's great to hear these things, but at the same time, it's also a reminder that if we can't say exactly what we are doing to our friends, family members, and it's not evident and there is that large of a spectrum, that there is still a great deal of work that needs to be done. Especially when it comes to gaps in understanding across general counsels and the C-suite in particular, there is a need for just alignment, understanding. So with that, I think we're going to transition in right away. Curt, I'm going to start with you, but how do you think we can better bridge the gap in understanding among GCs, C-suite executives regarding the value and function of legal operations?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as you mentioned, that video was also very eye-opening, very real, but very eye-opening. And I think one of the issues is legal operations can be so many different things. I think the CLOC has the 12 core competencies, and each of those, there's a lot in each of those, so it can be a lot of different things. So I do think each company, each CLO GC needs to figure out what do they want legal operations to be for their company, and that can evolve over time. But for me, at kind of the highest level, I need legal operations to help me run the legal department like a business, right? We are providing a service, legal services, and we need to know, how good is that product? What is the cost of the product? Do our customers like the product? How do we make the product better? And so you need financial data for that. You need process data for that. So we've been on a journey where we first started, when we first kind of launched legal operations, we were very tech focused, right? We needed a contract management system. We needed an e-billing system, and we were very tech focused. And so that period of time, we were very kind of legal ops is very tech focused for us at Fairing. But we've evolved, and now we're trying to convince people legal ops is not just technology, it's much more than that. And it is now, we're really in that period where I need it to help me run my business, my legal services business with data. What is the cost of the legal service provided by an internal lawyer, by an external lawyer, by outsourcing lawyer, and what is the data from our systems, our contract management system, to make that better? So right now, for me, it's a clear message. Legal operations helps me run my legal department like a business.
One thing that I think is evident right off of that, though, that I would ask people to think about is it really the general counsel's job to establish and kind of fight that fight for what legal operations is? Or is there an opportunity to make it more self-service, apparent, and consistent, so it's not you fighting the fight to establish what it is? Mary, same question, and also if you have any thoughts about that as well.
So we've been talking about this as a panel for a while, and I actually had some more thoughts even in the last 24 hours about the trends and where everything's going. I've been saying for a few years now that I think that legal ops as a profession has really come to a bit of a fork in the road, right? So we have to define which direction we're going to take. Are we a tactical team? Are we managing the day-to-day operations of the legal department? Or are we a transformation change agent? Are we leading this legal department into the future? That can all be part of the same team. There's different roles. Which way are we going? There's a place for all of that. And the challenge I think that we're at is everything is changing so fast. So what we were a year ago, 2 years ago, is very different from where we're going. I was starting to question yesterday from so many of the conversations I had, is legal operations even the right term for what we do as a career? And if you think about the changes we're seeing from the general counsel's role, so many of the general counsel are now being elevated into what is the CLO's office, right? The CLO role. And is that just legal? They now have compliance, they have regulatory, they have data privacy. There's all these other functions that those of us who were traditionally called legal operations now have to get into. So we're learning compliance software and compliance operations and all these other areas. The other half of our title, operations, if you look across your organization at the other G&A ops teams, marketing, finance, DevOps, they seem to me to be very much running the day-to-day operations, data management, metrics, reporting for those teams. But are any of them really thinking about being a change agent and a transformation agent for their entire company, for their organization, and leading the charge the way that I think some of our very best legal operations professionals are? So this is a new thought. It's not fully formed, kind of dangerous to be putting out there, but I'm kind of wondering, where is our role going? And if you ask 5 people out here today what they do, what their titles are, even if we find 5 people with the same title, if you find 5 directors of legal ops, and I'm so happy that the titles are being elevated and they're much more in the director and VP level, you will find 5 people doing very different roles. And there's a place for all those roles. There's billing coordinators, there's outside counsel managers, there's data analysts, there's project managers, there's CLM specialists, there's the strategic folks, there's the transformation. So how do we define all these things? And as you're a general counsel or on the leadership team as a lawyer, someone coming to you and saying, hey, look, you really need this new function. Someone who doesn't practice law is going to come in and they're going to do legal operations. Well, if you haven't been in a department that has that function already, it's such a foreign concept. Like, what is this person going to do? I haven't seen it at a law firm. I haven't seen it at the places I used to work. So, when we go and say, God, these GCs, they just don't get it, how can you blame them? We have to get out there and educate. They haven't seen it. We have to show them the art of the possible of what this role is and how it can deliver value. So what I encourage us to do is you have to define it. You have to help the GC understand. If they are so forward-thinking enough to even have that role and to open it up, it is up to us to figure out which path we want to take in the company and get yourself into the meetings, lead. The other kind of final thing is, before I pass it on, is the most forward-thinking GCs that get the role are people who've seen it, right? And Curt is a great example, but if you used to work at Google, for example, and you knew what legal ops was, and now you go become a GC somewhere else, those are often the folks who are like, I need legal ops, right? Because I know what they do. I need that in my department as well. What I would also challenge leadership teams and GCs to do is because they come to me and they say, I need to find someone who's done this at a similar company in a similar industry because, okay, Mary, you've done it for 10 years. We'd love to have you come in and do that again. And honestly, if I were to go do legal ops again, I would throw away everything that I learned and everything that I did, because we are in a time that you can leapfrog, that you shouldn't take the playbook and do everything that we did 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Now is the opportunity to hire someone in new, not care where they came from, not care that they've done this role, but really think we have a whole new set of opportunities, tools, providers, options in the way that we deliver legal services. What should that look like today and tomorrow, not yesterday? Stop benchmarking against the time where we were still figuring this out. All right, that's enough for my soapbox today.
If I could, I'd just like to comment on you made a note about CLOs and interesting. Recently, we changed Sheila's title from head of legal operations to head of CLO operations and innovation.
Interesting.
So both the expansive role across the CLO organization, but also underlining that innovation is critical to that role.
Cool. And is CLO even the right title, right? Because you do a lot more than legal now.
Yeah, well, the CLO group, right, it's IP, it's compliance, it's privacy, that's all under the CLO title.
Yeah.
Thank you both, Curt and Mary. I think now we're going to be transitioning to just getting perspectives from our regional leaders as well. So we have the benefit of having two regional leaders at the forefront of legal operations here, Guy and Katrina. You're both in emerging markets where you're at the forefront of this drive and kind of battle, I think we could say. So what are you experiencing as barriers? What are you experiencing as barriers currently? Guy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, for sure. So in Brazil, we have a different scenario. Like the first legal operations position that we had in the country was 2018, 19. So we are talking about 5-6 years. We are still very positioning like in the awareness phase. People don't know exactly what is legal operations. And when they do think that it's practice operations only, that it's like a paralegal that we're going to have here. It's going to be like a fancy name for something that we already had. So they are still trying to better understand what is legal operations, if they know what is legal ops. So we have like this work to build together, like to state with people that it's like legal operations, it's not only the piece of operations, as you were saying, but it's a strategy. It's connected to strategy. How can you partner with your legal leaders as in-house? So we are still in these discussions. For example, in Brazil, we don't have like, as in-house, a legal operations director, for example. The toppest role that we have there, the title, it's senior manager. So this makes difference, like when we are talking about career ladder, how we are discussing like the positioning of legal ops in the legal leaders discussion for the next steps, for the OKRs, for the legal team, this impacts very well. So we need to better understand how can we position for people first to know what is legal operations, to connect that with strategy, and then to move forward, like to think, okay, what is the connection with GCs or chief legal officers? What is the connection across like the company itself with some other ops areas that we have? So we are doing very well, and we are trying to do very well this work for people to be aware of legal ops. So that is the main stuff that we are facing in Brazil right now.
Thanks, Guy. In the Asia-Pacific region, I think we've got a very strong core of committed legal operations professionals, some of whom are lucky enough to make it to CGI, and I think we're really committed and dedicated. We know what we do, we know our role, but I think beyond that, that street talk segment we had, you could have been on the street in Sydney or Melbourne with us talking to our colleagues. It's a very similar story. So I think we're sort of still in the education phase around what legal operations is. And by way of example, I started my second role in legal operations about 10 months ago. And it was only sort of about the 6-month mark, I think, where my team really understood the breadth of what I could support them with. So, we're having an offsite. Maybe Katrina can help with that. It's coming up to budgeting season. We could get Katrina involved in that. So, I mean, they had made the decision. They'd invested in a legal operations person, hired me. I'd sat with them for 6 months, and I still don't think they'd kind of unpacked all of the opportunities that were in that. The second example, and it's really picking up on Mary's theme about the diversification of titles. Certainly we have that at the sort of director strategic level, but it's tenfold at the junior level, and I think we're starting to see, as the profession evolves, more directors of legal ops looking to hire their second or their third or the team, and there's a enormous diversification in where you find those roles and how you choose to sort of the titles that you give them. And I think, to Mary's point, it almost does our profession a bit of a disservice because we're not standardising how we, label ourselves, label our teams to sort of support a better understanding. And something that we've had a little working group in the Asia CLOC group is really looking at supporting standardising like position descriptions when you're hiring those roles and sort of going through the CLOC 12 core competencies and picking out the bits that are relevant, but there's still that standard language that we're using.
That's fantastic.
And I think maybe just the last point I'd make about the barriers or the challenges in the Asia Pacific region is, particularly in Australia, we've got a very strong practice of legal operations in our law firms. They outnumber the corporate legal operations professionals. Someone can have the same title as myself, but they're in a law firm, and what they do every day is enormously different to myself. But they're still part of our ecosystem, and we certainly, as a corporate sort of client, we lean on them as well. So we have that sort of challenge to sort of how we navigate those relationships and that part of the profession.
Thanks, Katrina. I think that everybody that is in this kind of legal operations field and ecosystem has kind of an affinity for action. So when I hear these things, I'm kind of chomping at the bit to say, okay, I hear the problem, I hear the disconnect. I think it's very apparent that we are at an inflection point, both with just opportunity to up-level, but then also being very well aware that especially in our different regions or different levels of familiarity with legal operations, that there is a need for building up of understanding. So it's kind of two different problems, but I think there's a huge opportunity there. So in that vein, what can we be doing to demonstrate an impact and overall up-level the role? And I realize that is such a large concept and forward thinking. So with that, I mean, Mary, I'd love to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about any other profession, and there obviously are multiple roles in different levels, and even the same role at a different type of company. If you're solo, whether you have a team of 100 people, they're going to look different, they're going to be paid different, they're going to be scoped differently. I've been kind of wondering personally if we start with the top, and there was recently a compensation survey that came out, and one of the things that frustrates me is the titles are the same, but you see someone making $80,000 and someone making $400,000. We're obviously not defining the roles, the same way if we're seeing such a discrepancy. So what is the right title level? How do we figure out what the job ladders are? And put comp aside, but let's scope out what those responsibilities and skill sets are. I think if we start at the top, the biggest companies, the leaders in their roles, that job is probably more uniform across, let's say Fortune 100 companies. And if we can get that right, at least I think you set the comp, you set the expectations at the top, at the biggest companies. And I think traditionally that's how, the surveys, the comp surveys, the benchmarking, like all the other roles will kind of follow if you get that anchored correctly. If we don't anchor that properly, then everything else is wrong. So, let's start there. I also think this is a great community, this is a great environment, and there's no better home than CLOC. But I also think if we're all talking here, we're all nodding, right? Everyone's like, yeah, that's right, that's a good point. When I've gone into conferences that are attorneys, think of it like a GC summit or a privacy summit, and you go talk about legal ops, or you sit down with a bunch of people and you say you do legal ops, you get blank stares. You get people going, wait, what? I've never heard of that. If you ask people in the room, let's raise our hand who's heard of it, you would be shocked. Like 90% of that room will raise their hand and say, I don't know, tell me more, what is this? And there's a curiosity and they want to learn, and that's great, but if we're not out there advocating, spreading the word beyond the confines of our friends, that a bit of an echo chamber, we love each other, we're learning from each other, but we need to get out and educate law schools, law firms, lawyers, in-house teams about what this role is, the value that it can have. And then finally, just on the same point of we don't want to just keep repeating what we've done over and over. This role, this career path is changing so fast that we really need to figure out how do we define ourselves, and it's hard, right? Because again, it was different 2 years ago. Now we have this whole AI, we're transformation professionals. Is that the main part of what we do? Or we still do a lot of the operations and day-to-day. So how do we package that? How do we tell that story, and how do we deliver what that value is so that a GC who comes up to you and says, tell me more, I've never heard of this, is gonna have the same answer that someone else has. So it's hard, it's changing, it's dynamic, but I do think if we can align and tell the story, we gotta start there.
How do you feel, Mary, about some of the themes that I've heard from people, and I agree, is legal operations is different. But I do feel that there is a little bit of that ends up being a barrier, and we're our own kind of worst enemy in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would challenge at a very simplistic level to embrace the resources that are available at your company or just with peers. When you think about like Radford, like job level surveys, it may not be the exact same thing that you're doing, but if there's components and leveling and a framework that you can leverage, there may be more benefit in adhering to a standard and then making clear nuances and areas of specialization rather than saying everything from soup to nuts is unique with legal operations.
It's an excellent point. And so for those who aren't familiar with Radford, it's like the industry standard comp survey.
Correct. Yeah.
That HR would use, right? If you're creating a new function, they would look at that and say, let's see how we would define the levels and the roles in the comp. And there, of course, is nothing in there for legal operations, but I think it's exactly right. These roles exist in every other function. Do we have to say it has to be specifically legal operations, or then do we just generalize and say we're an operations team that specializes in legal and compliance and privacy and everything else? Yeah.
Because I think we end up fighting minuscule battles if we're fighting that rather than like the areas of specialization, the up-leveling and the advocacy.
Right.
Like even if it's just a like proof of concept to try within your company, I actually think there is benefit in that because then you get the benefit and the uplift from using something that is standardized, that is maintained, and has other data points, rather than being something that is unique that can easily get behind, like in the Times with like salary or benchmarking and things like that. Kind of along the same lines, Curt, how do you think that we can move things forward and take action?
Yeah, well, on that point about kind of positions and leveling, because as I mentioned, we're now recruiting for a position in the U.S. and we had to get it leveled, and we don't use Radford, we use another company, and they had nothing for legal operations. And I said, how can it be? There are thousands of people, in this profession for 15, 20 years here in the U.S. How can it not be there? I think it should be there. On the other hand, as you mentioned, Mary, some of those positions aren't unique to legal operations.
Right.
Like last year we hired a legal data scientist, and we just mapped that to another
regular data
scientist. Right, because that's not unique. But perhaps higher up, the head of legal operations may be a bit different. Yeah. As you mentioned, innovation is a key part of that. I'm not sure that's always in the other operations positions, so maybe that's a bit different.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to comment on that. But in general, thinking about how do we prove kind of the value of legal operations? For me, it started with belief. So I have this hypothesis that if we bring people in who can help me run my legal department like a business, help me bring in legal tech, help me outsource, help our processes be more efficient and continue to be more efficient, that over time we shouldn't have to add more headcount, we can have less reliance on outside counsel. But that was a hypothesis. Now I need the data to prove that. And my chairman is asking me for the data to prove that. A couple weeks ago we had a deep dive. He wanted a deep dive in each function, and he went through us, and you could see the legal operations headcount going up. And he's like, well, that's a lot. So what is it doing for you? And we need more data to tell that story, and now we have a data scientist. We're hiring more legal ops people to help us prove that legal ops is really doing what we expect it to do. But I think the preliminary data we have does look good, right? I mean, the head count is not increasing a lot, and we're also shifting it to places like Lisbon, where we can get great talent for certainly less expensive than Switzerland. And we're starting to get that data to show, and we look at outside counsel, and I look at number of hours we've used them per year rather than cost, and I can see the hours are relatively flat, and of course the outsourcing costs are flat. So I think the data is starting to get there. I need more data to first convince myself, but then convince my chairman. So I do think we need to prove that we are adding the value we think we're adding.
I think you're definitely taking like the right proactive steps, and I love to hear that you're investing in data, because that's one of the big takeaways really is that data is going to be a motivator in everything. I do think that there's a benefit in kind of taking a larger viewpoint, though, just because, I mean, I've seen it in my role and when looking at just like operations and conversations in like QBRs or with your COO, it's kind of a slippery slope if you just are focused on headcount. Because unless you're saying that there's different ratios and they have ebbs and flows. So depending on what's going on with your industry, your company as a whole, you may have, when you start out, like a 50-50 split, like your 50% of your spend is in-house with headcount, 50% is on outside counsel. At a different maturity level or at a different company facing different issues, it may be 70-30. So I think being thoughtful about that gives general counsels a lot of wiggle room to adapt with the business, but then also thinking about ways to think about like cost to serve holistically. So it gives you more flexibility without just focusing on headcount, and then also trying to highlight areas where you actually are bringing in revenue or assisting with revenue, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be impactful to your CEO or COOs. With our regional leaders, I would love to hear about specific examples about what you both are doing in your unique environments to demonstrate your value and impact.
Thanks, Frances. So as a sort of single legal operations operator in my Australian team, I'm very conscious that they made a decision to hire me instead of another lawyer. And so what I tend to focus on is my different but complementary skills that I can bring to the team to sort of lift the visibility, lift the value that we deliver, and how that's perceived and seen. And a really practical example is I've got, it's quite a high-performing legal team that I work with, and every year they had this tremendous, they call it a wins list, and it's 3 or 4 pages of just them summarising all of the amazing deals, transactions, funds that they've set up. Each item incredible, but like the 4 pages of it, no one reads it. I'm convinced nobody ever reads it. Like they kind of do it as a bit of a record. They use it for their performance reviews, but it sort of stops there. And I was like, this is incredible. And so one of the first things I did when I started was, I'm going to turn it into a PowerPoint pack. And they're like, beautiful corporate branding. I have a bit of data from our matter management system, sort of some external information, some terrific graphics. And all of a sudden we had like this 10-page slide deck. Same information, but much more digestible, and the GC took it to our sort of deputy chief executive like, this is fantastic, can we get one of our other teams to do it too? And I think straight away, when you're talking to the broader business, they could connect the dots on what we were doing. There's something about going from Word to PowerPoint that just resonates with a lot of our business colleagues, and I think, it's really simple, but it's really very impactful. And I think professionally, with my sort of CLOC hat on, a little bit similar to sort of Mary's point in terms of just, getting the word out there about legal operations, but outside of the bubble. So I love this room, you're my people, but when we're talking to each other, we share a bond, we share a love, so it's everyone here thinking, well, when I leave CGI, how am I going to talk about what I did, who I met, to people that don't understand legal ops? And so for me, there's opportunities to speak at conferences, to speak within my company and kind of profile what I did here, and also even things, I think, like mentoring university students. They're the next generation, and I often sort of put my hand up and I say I'm really keen to participate, often through law schools. I say I'm not really a lawyer, but I'm in the legal industry and I'd love to mentor a student maybe that's got a particular bent in innovation, because I think that's sort of another opportunity to sort of educate even more broadly about what legal operations is.
That's amazing, Katrina. Yeah.
And for us, to demonstrate value, one thing that we were thinking in the beginning is how legal ops can level set with the legal team itself. How can we demonstrate value to the lawyers for the legal team itself? So we figured out that these were not working because we had a lot of internal clients that weren't unhappy with the situation, with the relation with legal, as many internal clients they do have, like within house. So one thing that we were thinking is like, okay, let's think about UX, the user experience, like our internal clients, what it's like their mental model. Whenever they are trying to talk to us, what they think. They like to talk to us, they like to come to us and to ask a question, or they rather like bypass in any way. So we were doing a lot of these exercises, and the main thing that we got like from this UX piece is like, let's share with them, let's state to them that we are hearing their pain points, what they want, what they need, what they don't like. So let's partner with them. So this worked very well. Like we were thinking, we were doing like, we changed the tool for CLM to be together with the CRM for their sales pipeline. We were doing a lot of changes, not only in tools, but in behavior that we were having, like with the especially the commercial teams. And this worked very well, like to demonstrate the value itself. But doing that, doing the change and all this stuff was not enough. And to demonstrate the impact, we did two main things. One was we built like a legal newsletter, and we partnered up with the marketing team. So we were able like to send these emails in a way that we could track who were opening, who was opening the emails, who was clicking on the links that we were sending in this legal newsletter. They were reading like, I don't know, 30 seconds, 10 minutes in the legal newsletter. We were able to track like these insights from these. I mean, kudos to the marketing team who supported us, but was very helpful. We were sending like these legal newsletters, very helpful for us. And the other piece that we did, that I saw on your LinkedIn, this tip, Mary, was to do the year-end review that we were building in the end of the year, like all the stuff that we built, all the value that we provided to the company, and we were sending like to the leadership team and for the global legal team as well. So these supported us like to be connected, adding value, and with the impact, and to prove like that all the stuff that we are doing, to share, and to spread good practice in the company.
That's a great recommendation, and I think it's very easy to just get caught up in the day-to-day and just executing, but to your point, being able to like specifically take a step back to document, curate, and get the data not only for you, but for your team, to say this is the impact, this is the ROI, and this is the value, because if you don't do it, no one else is going to do that. And I think we have a number of people in here that are very humble, which is amazing. But when it comes to advocating for your team and documenting these things, don't be humble. Like, you need to document it. You want to make sure that you can advocate and that it's apparent. Because, again, to the point, if we're still at this kind of inflection point with the industry where people are struggling about value add or consistency on what we do, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're advocating and up-leveling that information actively and proactively. So for the group, Mary, I'll start with you. If there was one takeaway or action item that you would ask either the audience or legal operations professionals generally to take, and it could be something we talked about, it could be something just that you're hearing from an industry perspective, what would you say?
So maybe I'll answer your question, but I've had this thought over the last couple days that I kind of want to comment on, and all this is great, the newsletter and showcasing, and that's been my advice to you all for a long time. But so I have a strategy session that I'm teaching this afternoon, a workshop with Scott Westfall from Harvard Law School, yay. And as we were preparing for that, and as I continue to think about what we want to talk about this afternoon, two of the biggest questions that come up are, how do we demonstrate value, right, for ourselves and our legal department as a whole? That's the GCs are always asking, how do we demonstrate value? And the second is, how do we become more strategic and aligned with the business? And what I've become frustrated with over the past couple days is, why are we still asking these questions? Why do we have to showcase our value? Why is it so hard for us to demonstrate our value? And what I've noticed in some of the conversations I've had recently is people don't know what it means to be strategic. And we keep saying we want our roles to be more strategic. We need to align with the business. And they're like, yes, well, do you have a strategy? What is the legal ops strategy that you have? Reduce costs, be more efficient. That's not truly a strategy. The strategy should be able to tell you not just what you want to do, well, it's what and the how. So it's, you have to be able to prioritize your work by asking yourself, does this project fit in with our strategic plan? And I don't think we do that. I think we do a lot of taking stuff because people want us to do it, and this sounds like a good idea, and we want more data, so let's do that project. And if we're really challenging ourselves to work on the right things, what I would love to see from everyone is we are delivering on the right projects in such a phenomenal way that there is no question that we need to demonstrate the value. The value should be so obvious to everyone that this touches. Nobody should be turning around and going, why do you need headcount? Why do you need more budget? They should say, that was huge. More of that stuff.
I think you're definitely spot on, and I think the strategy lens is an area where there isn't enough conversation about it. There isn't enough understanding even within the group here to be able to specify that.
Yep.
And legal operations and legal tends to be a support function in a lot of areas. So you think you can't really come out kind of aggressively to make like legal operations' own unique strategy, but I would say based on what you're seeing and what everybody is seeing across the ecosystem, I would challenge everybody to double down on that.
Yeah. And I think the observation I've had over the last few days is we have a lot of folks that are really good at execution, really good at tactical, and a lot of folks that have moved up and are in these great senior leadership or senior management roles, but what we want to do is get you to leadership roles. And that is a whole nother skill set that maybe you haven't experienced or haven't been trained on. So that's something we need to go out and get educated and up-level ourselves. If you're struggling to get to that level, it's not about just banging your head against the wall and saying, I'm executing, I'm doing a great job, I'm doing the project really well. There's other stuff that we need to learn, and this is where business school is great, and there are courses, but we need to kind of do more leadership courses.
I agree. Curt?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think strategy is a good point. If, kind of one piece of advice for the legal ops people is, agree with your GC or CLO and with what is your legal ops strategy. Yesterday, Sheila and I gave a presentation on the Fairing Legal Services vision, right? How we designed it, why, where it's going, and I think legal ops needs that direction. And agree on the prioritization, right? You can't do everything. We need to prioritize. But with that direction, with that prioritization, you should be driving forward, pushing hard. I would add a caveat that's easy for me to say as a CLO. Yeah, let's go forward. I can tell my whole team. But it's the legal ops people that are out there talking with the lawyers, talking with the rest of the organization, and change is hard. There's always resistance, and people are going to push back. So I think one of my responsibilities is to make sure I'm creating space for the legal ops team. Everyone knows the direction we're going, and we're doing that together. But I encourage you to make sure you're aligned with your GC and CLO where you are going.
That support and alignment is critical because, I mean, Mary, you mentioned it too, like you will just be banging your head up against the wall. Yeah. That's a very difficult battle without the support and just alignment with your general counsel and leadership team. Katrina?
Thanks. I think sort of similar theme, getting alignment on prioritization with your general counsel and stress testing their alignment with the corporate strategy as well is very important because sort of the legal ops has to connect into procurement, finance, IT, and so I think, there's great benefits if when you're reaching out to them, there's no point in pointing to the legal team strategy. They need to sort of appreciate it in the broader scheme of the corporate. And I think sort of further to that theme, and maybe Sheila makes Curt look good, but my job is to make my GC look good as well. I sort of see that as a really, strong driver for me. I think professionally though, I find, being a CLOC member and being a regional co-lead with Anna is enormously rewarding, and so anyone in the room that sort of is interested and passionate, like make sure you're part of your regional group or a special committee group, put your hand up, volunteer, there's lots of opportunities, but I found it enormously rewarding. I get to have conversations like this, so have a think about that option as well. It's incredibly rewarding.
Thank you. And one thing I think too to call out is along the lines of the conversation we've been having, you're spot on, and a big part of legal operations is how to make your general counsel or CLO look good.
I like that.
but yes. I would also say, based on the conversation we've been having, I would challenge you to think about how you can make your CEO, COO, and executive staff look good. Because ultimately, your GC or CLO is reporting to that person. So I think there is a lot of benefit in just shifting that mindset slightly, and it creates a very different conversation.
Yeah, and I think to that point, it's where that cross-collaboration comes in as well, because I think there's nothing, well, certainly in the organisations I've been in, that's CEOs and COOs love to hear is all about like cross-team collaboration. Like that's sort of poetry to their ears. It means out of the silos, people are leveraging. So, you know, bringing out that skill and those achievements in legal ops is definitely a sort of a strong point in that aspect, yeah.
Guy, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, for legal ops that are starting, and I don't think it's only for starting as well, it's talking to people. Talk to people, build communities. That is super important. Like, if you don't have like a reference, and if you don't have like a journey, as we were talking, you need to have like some references to go through and to see what I want to do as a legal ops. What is like my the company of my friend, like what he's doing, what these people are doing as well. So to connect, to catch up, this is super important. In Brazil, we saw the difference. Like all the time that we do an event, a small event, people are starting talking more about legal operations, better understanding. So that is key. That is key for us. Like what we are doing right now, we are catching up, we are understanding best practice. So this is super important, and that's what we are doing right now. So for me, like one key takeaway is to do what we are doing here and do even more. So.
Well, thank you, everybody. I do want to give a huge thank you to all of our amazing panelists. Our goal today was to have a great conversation that was beneficial, but we also wanted to come away with actions and takeaways, so we hope that we have done that for you. I would encourage you all to reach out to the group via the CLOC app. You can do connections with everybody. You may see some people on brain dates. But just make sure you're taking advantage of that community, because as you can see, the leaders up here are world-class. They're inspirational, and they're really pushing people to think about legal operations, what it is, what it isn't yet, and what it could be. So I just want to thank you all for that.
Thank you, Frances.
So that concludes our panel. Again, I want to thank everybody for your participation. I think everybody can go kind of take a breath and a sigh of relief now that this is done. But I would like to invite Angela Dentex to take the stage shortly for some closing remarks. And thank you all for your time and attention. We appreciate it.
Thank you.